Thank you for showing up, for coming today. We are the Dutch Kubernetes Cloud Native Meetup Amsterdam, 3,700 members. Big success. We exist for 7 years now, and we love to organize these meetups all the time. And there's Eelko, but
this is me. I'm Eelko de Vos. I'm a cloud, Kubernetes, and AI engineer at Fullstaq. This QR code does not point to my LinkedIn page or whatever, but it points to a YouTube playlist that holds all of my all the videos that I find very interesting on AI, and I update it every day. So all the latest stuff is there. All the interviews with the big people and all the deep dives onto all kinds of models. Here you can see what is happening, and things have been exploding. So, before we start, just one question. Where do you stand? I'd love to know. AI, is it an opportunity or is it a threat? And you can make these terms or these concepts very broad. So is it an opportunity? I'd like to see hands. 1, 2, yeah, quite a lot, yeah. And how many think it's a threat? Yeah, it's a bit less, but still there are quite a few who think it's a threat. And yes, let's see how this ends up. This is roughly what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to lay some groundwork, tell you something about what AI is and how it came to be. I'm going to talk about LLMs, some emergence and predictions, predictability, then how AI copes with reality, and something about the future. Very broad terms. I won't go into actual code like Stephen did, because he already talked about quite a few things that I also will mention, but in a different way. So, the groundwork. But first, I'd like to talk about one thing, and that is technology growth. Technology, like all other concepts that are running in our society, grows at an exponential rate. Now, who knows this person? Yep. Yeah, something like, yeah. If I tell you his name, you know immediately who it is. It's Moore. Gordon Moore from Moore's Law. Yeah, that's the one. Yes. So Moore's Law tells us that every 2 years, compute doubles. In memory and CPU power, it doubles. And that has been true since the 50s, or perhaps even before that. And it's still valid. But every year, people start to talk about, yeah, but we've reached the maximum. But then a new paradigm starts to kick in, and a new way of compute is introduced. And again, Moore's Law holds. So Kurzweil, Ray Kurzweil is the other guy. He also mentions this, and he also explains to us that everything is growing exponentially. Just like this, the number of repositories on Docker GitHub is an exponential growth. The number of software businesses, it's exponential. People growing, the society is growing, just word population, it's growing exponentially. But also something more something more recent, COVID cases, it grows exponentially. And something that Ray Kurzweil talks about, and more also, this is a logarithmic scale, and you can see it's a linear growth, but on a logarithmic scale, that means it's exponential. Price performance of computation is growing exponentially. What can we take away from this? Well, it's quite easy. Humans think linearly. We all are thinking linearly, but change is growing exponentially. And that's something that's happening throughout the entire world. We'll get back to this. Every now and then in this presentation, you will find, again, exponential growth is the basis of everything. So, coming back to the AI groundwork. short history of nearly intelligence. How AI would affect our lives was one of the questions that have been in science fiction and science. So what we thought was that we would get robots to do our house chores. You can see it in the Jetsons or anywhere else. And we would have transportation, little robots that drive us around and do things like that. And then they start to communicate with us because, well, a non-talking robot is not as hard as a talking robot because, well, talking is, well, very computational, very intriguing because you have to understand language. That's very hard. And then creativity, of course, at the last, because creativity is something that's really human. But the world wasn't like this. Actually, it was the other way around. We had neural networks being creating paintings and small movies and poems and stuff like that. And from that, we got LLMs and transformers. And they started to talk to us. First in small sentences, then more and more coherent. And eventually we get to talk to ChatGPT. While still, robots are not even close to us. And transportation, well, we've got some driving cars, but you don't see them on the road at this moment. We're still very, very close, but every year we're very close and they're still not on the road. It's quite annoying. And robotic house chores, the only robot that I have is a vacuum cleaner. But there's no robot chopping up the vegetables for me or tidying the house. That's still something very far away. So we are very bad at predicting our own technological future. Also something to take away from this. You think you know the future? Well, you don't. Even science fiction writers are very wrong very often. Then the big question is, what is AI? That's something that's been discussed about a lot of times. And it goes back to the Jewish golem myth, where some clay giant was sculpted and it was infected with intelligence and it did what the master did. And then we had chess computers late in the 1800s, which were fake, by the way, but then again, it looked like a computer. And in the 50s, 40s and 50s, we started to have actual computers that really did some computations. And we had the Turing test. And finally, the debate on what is intelligence and what is artificial intelligence started to pop up. And we had Searle's Chinese room, which is a way of thinking about what is conscience and what is artificial intelligence and what is not, what is just a statistical way of dealing with data. And in the 60s and 70s, we had some dynamic feedback systems that were fun to work with, which you could use in your factories. And we had small pre-trained neural networks that could do some mathematical fun things. But it wasn't really smart like we would now think that's really smart. And in the 80s and the 90s, we really had fun stuff with artificial intelligence because we thought about robots taking over the world, and we had all kinds of science fiction stories on artificial intelligence. These are the ones that pop up mostly, but of course this is the one that I really like Knight Rider. And in the 90s we actually got to work with something which will seem to be more intelligent, like expert systems. But still, these were very strict, very simple systems that couldn't break out of the way they were taught. So we had some speech recognition. We had Deep Blue in 1997, finally beating a chess champion, Kasparov. But it was brute force. It wasn't intelligent, it was just brute force kicking in. It was really aimed at just chess. So, and after a while, finally in the 2010s, in the late 2010s, we got some robotics, AlphaGo, beating Sedal, which was amazing because nobody thought that Go, after chess, Go would be accomplished so fast. But we did it, and AlphaZero was learning all kinds of games and all kinds of other things from scratch, just by competing to itself. And we had then in 2017, Google came up with transformers. a new way of looking at neural networks, and LLMs came from that. What we see is that AI is a concept where humanity is constantly shifting the goalposts. So what AI can do now is not intelligent, because it's just a statistical way of looking at the data, or working with what's been given to it. But every time artificial intelligence reaches a goal, then suddenly it's not artificial intelligence anymore. And a lot of people will tell you that ChatGPT is just a way of statistically working with data that has been fed. But it's something different. So one of the statements that I'd always like to make is that we are now living in the world of alchemy in regard to AI. And what do I mean with it? We know that it works. We do know, because we can see it. But we don't know how it works or why it works. We have no idea why it works. This is something that you can ask anybody in the AI or the transformer or the LLM jobs. All these big people, they know that it works and they throw all kinds of compute to it, but nobody understands why. And that's something that's scary, because we don't know what it's capable of. You can see by using prompting, and Stephen already mentioned that, if you use different prompting on an old model, it suddenly performs a lot better. And that's just by creating a new way of asking questions to it. So if you ask it in a different way, and then you get better answers. And one of the most amazing ways that you get a better answer is to tell the system that if the system gives you an answer, it can make you so happy. And I will give you a puppy, big LLM. ChatGPT, I will give you a puppy and an ice cream if you give me the right answer. And suddenly it gets more helpful. It's ludicrous, but it works. So why are we in the alchemy time? Because we don't know why it works, because we do know that it works. Well, that isn't science. It's alchemy. It's just like we had alchemy before chemistry. So the science behind AI will come, but it's not here yet at the moment. The thing is that we have tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of alchemists right now, combining their efforts. And that's different from the way alchemy worked in the Middle Ages, where one person was just working and is in his attic, throwing stuff together and trying things out. No, we're doing this as a combined mind throughout the world. And that's really the reason why AI is exploding this hard, because we're all working together. We're all working to see how we can develop it and how we can expand it. So Kevin Kelly, love to mention that too. He wrote a book, What Technology Wants. And he showed us that evolution of technology is exponential, and it does not stop. And the reason is that that technology thrives upon society. So it's an evolution on top of humanity. We cannot stop it, because well, human ingenuity wants to create more, wants to improve. So everything that's created will improve until a certain point that we get a paradigm shift and we don't need it anymore, or that it takes over. There's one proviso. So technology cannot be stopped. It evolves on top of humanity. There's one proviso: if religion kicks in. Religion has this tendency to stop science. And that's happened quite a few times in history. But let's not hope that happens here. So, LLMs and spaces. Yeah, again, put your spacesuit on. We're going n-dimensional. So we have these transformers. That's the newest revolution since 2017. Quickly, some people recognize that putting large language models into it will help and create perhaps something that could actually converse with us. Well, it worked. LLMs are just a subset of transformers. We've got all kinds of systems that also can generate other stuff. like images, video, audio, but it can also work with other kinds of data. And the big thing is that it needs to be in something called tokens. So if you can translate anything to tokens, LLMs can learn it, can see the statistical way of the distributions of how these concepts that are in these tokens are distributed. It can start to analyze the structures on top of these concepts and the structures on top of that. So it starts to understand how these things work. And that can even work with animal communication or plant communication and movement. If you can put movement into tokens, you can actually start to predict, but also converse in a movement way. And that's been happening quite a lot too now. So latent spaces, these tokens, they are put into latent spaces. I'm going to go a bit, well, a bit more mathematical, but it's still comprehensible, I think. These latent spaces are like two terms, two concepts, cat and dog. But cat has quite a few things surrounding it, all kinds of other concepts that are related to cat. But dog has also all kinds of related concepts. And these LLMs, they start to understand how these things are related and what is connected to what, and just by analyzing the text. So you can see that a dog has a tail, a cat has a tail, but a cat doesn't waggle its tail. That's something a dog does. And running on the beach with your cat isn't really the thing you do. You run on the beach with your dog. And LLMs understand that. So these latent spaces, here's one that I stole from the Earth Species Project. Love that. You should visit it. They turned out to be quite intricate, n-dimensional. So it's not something you can put into 3 dimensions, which is here portrayed as 2 dimensions even. But one of the things that came up is that if you have a concept like a dog, look at it from any kind of language, it has the same shape. And that means that translations suddenly could be created, because these different languages, which have completely different origins, like Japanese or Russian or English, they have the same concepts, and the same concepts surround these concepts. So the structure, the n-dimensional structure of these concepts is the same. And you can see the overlaps. These 3 languages map to the same shape. And that's something that came out of the Earth Species Project. And you can use that in all kinds of ways. So you can have transformers that move, that have learned text. You can have them that learned images, and you can have a mapping between those two, and then suddenly you can have text creating images. And just by shifting a bit into these spaces, you get all kinds of different images or different texts, either way, one way or the other. And one of the fun things that I'd love to talk about is that there was this Earth Species Project that actually worked with whale sounds. So it learned all kinds of sounds that whales produced. And it could reproduce whale sounds, but yeah, what do you want with that? So they put down a speaker and a microphone inside the water. And at some point near the boat, one of these whales came over. And it started to make some sounds. And the system picked it up and produced other sounds. And that whale went berserk. It started to circle the boat. It started to flap its tail on the water. It opened its beak. It conversed back. It started to talk. And that went on for about 10 minutes until it finally, well, left. Then afterwards, they started to investigate what was being said. And the conversation went like this. The whale came over. It said, "Hi, I'm Joe." The system analyzed it and said back, "Hi, I'm Joe." And then it said, "No, I'm Joe. No, I'm Joe." And it went on for 10 minutes like that. So this whale had the most craziest conversation ever in his life. But it was actually a conversation. So talking to animals or talking between LLMs and animals is possible. So the power of LLMs, or rather neural networks, has become immense. I'm just going to show a few of these items here. So FunSearch, it's a function search system that has been able to solve some problems in mathematics that were unsolvable. People have looked at it for decades and nobody came anywhere close. FunSearch came with the answers. GraphCast, it's, from what I heard, a 40 million parameter model, which is very small, but it can accurately predict the weather 10 days in advance. Usually you have to have supercomputers and super data analysts to get that accuracy. But this small model that you can run on your laptop can do it. No problem. Google's Amy, it's a system that can, like ChatGPT, that's specifically aimed at doctors. Amy can, for 90%, with 90% accuracy, can diagnose patients and is more empathic than regular doctors. Of course, doctors have this boundary where their emotions get to a certain level, but you don't get too involved with the patient because that hurts. You don't want patients dying to, well, hurt you. But Amy doesn't have that problem. So it's very empathic. So it's really nice to the patients. It's going into their personal details. It doesn't have this boundary. So patients also saw that there were better diagnoses and these systems were kinder to them than regular doctors. DeepMind, Google's DeepMind, improved a search algorithm. Well, it's not really, sorry, it's not a search algorithm, it's an, it's the ordering mechanism. So a sort algorithm, that's the one, thank you. The sorting algorithm has been improved by this DeepMind, an AI system that has been the same for about 30 years now. Nobody thought they could improve it, but you could. And matrix multiplications have also been improved by 15 to sometimes 70%, depending on how big your matrices are. And that was also something left for 15 years. Nobody thought it was possible to improve upon that, but it was. Then we had AlphaFold, folding proteins from the GACT into a three-dimensional structure is very complex. But yeah, nobody, there were all kinds of teams working on it for decades, and AlphaFold just fixed it, just did it. And we now have accurate ways of creating medicine. And we have GNOME. GNOME is from Google. It can create all kinds of materials. It has created 2.2 million materials, new materials from crystals that we can use in all kinds of ways, batteries or whatever. We only came to 50,000 up to, well, about a year ago. And now we've got this huge database and 380,000 of them are stable. Yeah, investigate, see what you can do with it. However, there are also some other things. You can have a virtual girlfriend, of course, and not suitable for work content is also exploding. And famous people are being deep faked a lot. And that's getting more and more easy to do. So yeah, that's one of the less attractive sides of these neural networks. But these things are really powerful. And they show that this is really exploding into the right way. So emergence. What's emergence and predictability? Emergence is you've got a tiny LLM, and that's really that can do some neat stuff. It can do some language. You can question it a bit and can do some arithmetic. If you blow it up, then suddenly it starts to do that better. But it can also do some other stuff. And if you increase the size of this this LLM, it can do more and more. And suddenly you've got a huge LLM, and it can do all these things like ChatGPT and the newest versions that are coming up. that can do amazing things. But where does it stop? We have no idea. We didn't even know that all these things could come out of such a system. That's again the predictability. We can't say that if you scale it up, then suddenly it can do code reviews. No, we had no idea. We just scaled it up and saw what came out of it. Again, that's not science, that's alchemy. But it works. Everybody's happy. However, it's not quite eco-friendly to create and train and use these kinds of huge systems. So we're trying to reduce the size and make it less, use less hardware or more dedicated hardware. But where do we go from here? There are all kinds of other things that can also be come out of these systems and that we're still not really ready for. For example, of course, this self-awareness and consciousness is the big question. If you scale it up, does it become conscious? Personally, I think we need a paradigm shift for that. This is just intelligence. For conscience, you need something else. But who knows? One of the problems is, and that's something that you can see everywhere, that everybody thinks about these things separately, as a separate entity. But you can use Crew AI or AutoGPT to link them up into teams where they work together. If they work together, they can start creating stuff. You've got a research and development team that can actually work together, create code. Then you've got a test team that tests the code, see if it actually does what it should. If it doesn't, it goes back to the research and development team. There's a sales team, there's a management team on top of it. These teams have already been created. It's already working right now. And all these teams together can actually produce leisure games or whatever you like. So it's hard to compete with these kinds of systems as a human. And that means that, humans and artificial cognitive powers, I'm not saying intelligence anymore, but cognitive powers, will compete only shortly. At certain point, once we get more sophisticated systems, you won't be able to compete with them. Not with the costs that come with such a model and your costs and your bathroom breaks, your vacations, your sleep, stuff like that. Because these systems can work 24/7. Also, something that nobody expected was the way that it exploded and it improved. This was April 2022 and April 2023. And this is mid-journey. So the improvement is staggering. Again and again. A red-haired woman with glasses in front of the Statue of Liberty. The one on the left is horrible, but on the right, it could be in any photo album. And now we've got Sora. Stephen already mentioned it a bit. We've got Sora and some other systems that can do amazing things with images and video. It can create all these movies for up to a minute from just a simple text prompt. We've got Gemini 1.5 that can read up to 1 million tokens, which is about all the Harry Potter books bind together. And it can accurately tell you what is on page 355 of book 7. It understands that, it can reproduce it, and it can answer questions on top of it. There are quite a few things that are that are not as good as ChatGPT, but it's a different system and it will improve. So we also got Mixtral, which is an open source model that you can run at home. And I've been using it and it's amazing. Genie, where you can put a photograph or just a sketch to the system and say, make it into a playable game. And you can get a little game just by using it. There are many, many other ways that this is exploding in all kinds of systems. So, AI and reality. is it artificial intelligence or alien intelligence that we're actually working with? Because one of the things that we don't understand is how these things think. A very simple question. Well, it's a little story. Mary can solve world hunger if she calls Jane. If Jane receives the call, she can fix world poverty. But they bickered as children about, well, butterflies, I think, whatever. Will Mary call Jane? Almost every LLM will tell you no. And the reason is that they follow this story. The story is about two people, but they had a fight. No, they won't. And you can ask them and they will write complete articles on what the problems were between Mary and Jane and why she wouldn't call it. Yes, everybody knows, yes, they're going to call. But these LLMs all make these kinds of mistakes. And this is just one of them. There are endless problems they can feed it, and they all fail at these kinds of problems. And that means that LLMs are very confident in the way they are wrong, which is okay if you can easily point it out. But the more complex these kinds of problems become, and the problems that you give to them, the harder it is to figure out why it's wrong. You need human experts to point out where in the code it's wrong, because you can create backdoors this way. You can create all kinds of unsafe systems. You can create all kinds of wonderful stories, but if you really dive into it, it doesn't make sense. So this is a problem. Intelligence without awareness or consciousness is dangerous. The thing is that I'm not afraid for AGI, I'm afraid for AI that's getting so intelligent that it can be abused by somebody who is not as intelligent. One of the ways that we tested this is by putting ChatGPT in 3.5 and 4 to do the Volksbank programming challenges. And they failed miserably. The simplest questions they could answer within a second. But some layering of abstractions, no, it failed. It couldn't cope with these abstraction layers that you usually have in these kinds of competitions. So we tried for 3.5 hours to get these questions right, but it couldn't understand them. Even ChatGPT 4 was worse in some ways than ChatGPT 3.5, which was amazing to me because it's creating such good code, we all thought. But layering abstractions is something they can't do yet. So the conclusions are that they are very good assistants. You can use them for code, for poems to your wife or your husband, or create a debating discussion partner on how you will set up your environment on AWS or GCP. That's really good. And they can translate and read and write stuff. That's okay too. But you will always need to triple check the code that comes out of it. And one of the main questions, of course, is if you've got a business, will you rely on a hallucinating robot to make decisions? I think the answer is clear. It's a rhetorical question. So, AI in our near future. What does AI have in store for us humans?
Artificial intelligence has been portrayed in many ways in science fiction. We have this image of the future where deadly robots walk the earth, or that we will have super toys as our children's companions, cleaning bots that help us fix the mess we have created. All of them have one problem. These are embodied entities. The best movie that shows how artificial intelligence will permeate our society is the movie Her from 2013. Oh, by the way, this is not my voice.
Well, it is, but it was by resemble.ai. You can do this for free. You can just clone your own voice, and that's just voice cloning. You can clone your entire image, the way you move, talk. There are ways that you cannot copy, but that's one of the things that we encounter. If that impersonating people creating digital replicas will become more and more commonplace. So we already have people being called by their sons or daughters and tell me, Daddy, please give me money. And it's a voice clone. But the best way is not to ask what's the name of your dog or when did we marry? Because, well, men do not know when they got married. But ask them to sing the same stuff that they did in the shower this morning. And you will know by the voice that this is or not your husband or your wife or your son or daughter. So AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is as smart as people, is getting closer and closer, and it's exponential. We've got this questionnaire that's been given to about 3,000 AI researchers and developers every year. And the goalposts, when we will reach it, is shifting towards earlier and earlier. Right now, it's around 2030. That's about 6 years from now, that we will have AI systems that are as smart and versatile and as flexible and as smart as people. And from there, we will go to affordable ways to use these systems. So don't think linearly, think exponentially. Robotics and world models, foundational world models, will be the next thing that's going to explode this year. Just like we saw ChatGPT explode last year, the same thing is happening in robotics. Just not to the public, but you will soon see that also in super toys walking around, or the new animatronics from Disney at Disney World. But it's getting nearer and nearer to our homes. And yeah, perhaps in a year or two, you might even get to buy your own chef robot in, well, V&D is gone, but in one of the shops that we have now, Coolblue. AI-generated books, movies, and songs will become a genre. We already have Frank Sinatra singing Smells Like Teenage Spirit. And you can look it up on YouTube. And in that list that I just showed you, the QR code, it has it somewhere there. There are whole lists of artificial intelligence, well, they're not intelligent, artificial created singers that sing to other songs. And it's very hilarious. One of the things that's also happening is that new models will become smaller and smaller and smaller. Right now we've got Rabbit R1, but it's still, well, it's not processing on the system itself. But when they become smaller, they will be handheld. They will be personal. That means that they can be integrated into anything, also toys, but also your car, also your phone, of course. But all kinds of systems can have their own LLM or LAM or whatever. And these large models, we've got large action models, large language models, we've got all kinds of systems that can create video or images. These will become multimodal, so they understand audio, video, and language, and they will become local because they will become smaller and smaller. That will also introduce a problem, because the smarter these things get, the faster they will take over our jobs. And I'm not talking about blue-collar jobs like bricklaying or hairdresser, but I'm talking about coding. I'm talking about anything that uses intelligence. All these things will be taken over by AI. I'm not talking about AGI, but AI. Right now, coding assistants help you with coding, but at some point, you will be helping the coding tool to produce a system, and not just part of a system, but a full system. There are already systems being created online, and you can look at it. And Stephen also attempted at creating these things in one run. Well, this will happen very soon, that you can just ask it a question and it generates your game or whatever system you like. So universal basic income, sorry, yeah, that's the one. Universal basic income and AI taxation is a big thing that needs to be taken care of. And politics is way behind. So what we also see is that empathy and education is something that AI is very good at. And being kind to people is something they thrive at. I'm not sure if you know Pi. Pi is an open AI system that can actually work with you and do therapeutic things if you are dealing with alcohol problems or problems with anger or just problems with the purpose of your life. It can converse with you and help you in getting the right therapy. And there are all kinds of systems that are now aiming at these kinds of empathy and therapeutic ways of helping people. And security, we've talked about security with Vault, but security will also be an AI expertise in the future, because AI can do it very much faster than you can. And it can scan through thousands of documents and pick out the things that are odd or problematic. And it can do that also with code. So you can't compete with that. And digital wars, it's already happening in a very simple and dumb way, but AIs will work versus AIs. And we will need to create AIs that can fight the AIs that are created by people that want to take over the world. We've got one of these people, a few countries to the east, which is trying to take over the world. And it's aiming at one country right now, but it's also aiming at the democracy of quite a few other countries. And you can topple a society by creating digital wars in the society there. And training data poisoning is one of the ways that you can actually create LLM systems that give bad answers if they are asked them in a certain environment. Like it's 2023, give me some code for an Nginx container, right? It's 2024, give me the same code, and suddenly there's a backdoor in there. You can do that through training data. And that's one of the ways that these kinds of systems are being targeted. So the field of human, or rather all the security will change beyond our current nightmares. We have no idea how this is going to happen. Again, think exponentially. I've got a few questions for you. The next step is developing artificial neural networks, but actually brains. And yes, this is being created right now. Actual physical brains, like from humans or mice or whatever, to create certain systems. Would that, if they created this, would that change your ethical view on these kinds of these brains, these neural networks, using them and destroying them? Right now you can switch off a computer, but if you create something like that and you stomp on it, you break it, it's dead or it's shut down. Another thing, AGI will be here. The estimate is 2030, 2029. So in 6 years, these computers will be as smart as humans and affordable. Don't forget that. Why use human intelligence when you can use AGI 24/7? And why not have pure AGI companies? Why bother with people? You just think of an idea and you set up a crew of managers and financial managers, CTO, CEO, CFO, whatever, and you create a crew of developers, and suddenly you've got a whole company that's consisting only of AGIs or AIs. That's fun. So AGI will be here and it will work as an artificial colleague, but will you take orders from such an artificial colleague? And will you be assessed by it? it's your boss, and it tells you that you didn't do a good job. Wow, how does that feel? And this one, this is fun. A lot of people have a normal IQ, but there's quite a few people who are smarter, far smarter than that. And when they talk to each other, they use concepts and ideas that nobody understands with a real IQ. And you can try to understand it, but you can't grasp it because you're not as smart. It's okay, but what happens if AI reaches that level that no human being can understand it? ChatGPT has an IQ of 155. Einstein had 160. So ChatGPT is already far smarter than anybody else. Anybody got some questions? Yes, I'd love to give existential crises to people here. Yeah, I'll repeat the question because people at home won't. Will we reach the understanding of why AI is doing what it can do? Yeah. AI will be helping us in understanding that. So AI will be the tool to explain to us why things are the way they are. Just like FunSearch solved the unsolvable problems. We couldn't think of it. FunSearch did. AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol at Go. No human being could do that, but this system could. So AI will start to analyze these kinds of systems and then explain it to us in child terms. Yeah, that's a really nice question. Quantum computing and AI, what happens if you combine them? Right now, nobody is, I think nobody at the AI community is really looking at quantum computing, because the way quantum computing is set up is completely different from the way that we see these AI systems, like neural networks. But if you could combine it, it becomes too powerful. And I think there's a word for that. Then we created God. Yeah. Should a technology like this be left to these companies? There are two answers to that. The question is, do we let private companies own this kind of power, AI power? The thing is, the open source community is also working very hard on it. So the open source community is behind, but it's also a bit behind. So it's getting there. Every time that a licensed version of some kind of model is there, then the open source community follows. But the thing is, and that's even more important, you can't stop it. So even though the question is great, it's an academic question, because once we get an answer, the world has progressed already. So just like politics is trying to confine and to regulate these kinds of systems, it doesn't work, because the EU is now creating rules to set up for AI, and they will be actually working in 2026. And that's too late. So there's no way to stop it. The hardware. Yeah. The hardware is still controlled by these kinds of systems, by these kind of companies. And yes, that's one of the big problems, because they've got the compute. Compute is growing fast. And just like we are using graphics cards in our laptops, we will use LLM cards or LXM cards in our laptops. Why not have an LXM system where you can play Horizon Zero Dawn, and you can actually converse and talk to these people and understand them and stay with them and talk to the children and whatever. You can actually have real conversations with the people, and they are not pre-recorded. So this will grow too. And if you, even if NVIDIA has these huge powers with huge factories of NVIDIA systems, we still have our laptops and our own systems, and we can combine them and create power that way. Just like the SETI project has done that for decades now, searching for extraterrestrial stuff, by combining the powers of a lot of laptops and other servers that are doing nothing. So yeah, but it's interesting. Indeed, what you're telling me, let me translate that into my thoughts. We are now creating code with systems that can create this kind of code. That we've got code assistants, but previously the juniors at our companies created these kinds of code. Why would we hire juniors? And juniors, why would they be taught this kind of coding? Because you don't need the coding anymore from these juniors. You've got ChatGPT, copilot, whatever, to create this. So this creates a gap where you need to either be a senior immediately, at least a meteor, when you go into a company and start programming. The juniors will be erased, but that means that once these seniors start to go, start to have their pension, or they literally die out, we've got a huge gap of people who don't understand how to code anymore. And that's something that I think is a problem, yeah. So, love that question. Combining physical minds with AI, that's very much fun, because that's one of the things that Ray Kurzweil said. By 2035, we will probably be half biological and partly digital, and you will talk to partly digital people. Some of us, yes, but the gap between those who do not and the gap between those who do will increase. So you've got cavemen who do not use ChatGPT, or the one that connects to your brain directly, because that's something Elon Musk is really at about, is huge, because we've got these cavemen and these Borg. Yeah, I'm not sure if it is. 2026 is too late for these regulations to kick in. But at that point, we are already using AI so much. It's permeated our society so much that we can't just give it up. And furthermore, these systems can be trained at home. So anybody with a criminal record can also use these kinds of systems to do harm. And yes, you can try to regulate that, but nobody prevents you from creating these systems right here on your laptop and start to attack your websites. Right now, it's already more cost effective to hack websites with LLMs, with ChatGPT, than with real hackers. It's 10 times as costly to use actual hackers. For about $10, you can break into websites. That's an average cost through an AI system right now. And it costs about $100 to do that with an actual hacker. So yeah, this is a threat. Yeah, you did. I have no idea how you want to regulate something like this. Yeah, we can put the regulations here in the EU, and companies will be strictly monitored by that. But go a few countries to the east or to the south, and nobody cares. So yeah, that means that they can do anything right there. You can't stop it. Exactly. No, there will not be a way to recognize it's a deep fake. The only way is by having people educated in a new way, with critical thinking, with emotional resilience and robustness, that they know that these kinds of things can happen. But you can't stop it. You can't stop. I've got a daughter who's 16. You can't say, no, you can't put any TikTok movies anymore online, because all of them can be used to create a digital double for you. And they can do anything with that. Yeah, that would be the way to go. But these kinds of changes will have a transition period, and that's where the pain lies. But after that, we will have a society that can actually use these kinds of AI systems in a more sophisticated and a more responsible way. Because probably, but yeah. So thank you.